Hello and welcome. You're watching the N24 News. I am Mudiwa Ngum. Thank you for joining us. In the news this week in the Gambia, Peace Ambassadors the Gambia has disclosed its findings on the nomination process. The Gambia hosted Diaspora Roundtable Conference. Melville Roberts sues the government of the Gambia for $500,000 US. Gambian leisure boat arrested with cocaine in Senegal. DLEAG says report unfounded. And in the international scene, Ethiopia blocking help for rape victims. These and more stories coming your way. Stay tuned. Peace Ambassadors the Gambia has disclosed its findings on the nomination process. Peace Ambassadors the Gambia has observed different phases of the 2021 presidential elections. The observation started with party congresses, the voter registration process, candidate nomination period, and the ongoing campaign. More in this report with Mary Madeline Jai.
Peace ambassadors have announced the deployment of 59 election observers who will help to observe the December 4th presidential election. Speaking during a media briefing at its headquarters in Kanifing, Boubacar Sambou, president of Peace Ambassadors the Gambia, outlined more on their observations.
All 59 observers will observe and send campaign observation checklist report on 2 designated days, one in the middle and one at the end of the period, as well as send in critical incident reports throughout the process anytime they occur. Peace Ambassadors the Gambia observers will observe and report on campaign processes such as political rallies, campaign marches and demonstrations, debates, the use of the media, flyers, posters, billboards or community outreach events. They will also watch out for campaign violence within their assigned areas, such as propagation of hate speeches and divisive messages, intimidation and harassment targeted at electoral actors and other groups. Observers will further report on on civic and border education activities, awareness of and adherence to the COVID-19 health and safety measures, as well as the IEC campaign itinerary activities for the election day at the regional and constituency level. In addition to observers, Peace Ambassadors also train 5 data clerks that will be stationed at Peace Ambassadors National Information Center in Carnival, that is in this room, designated to collect checklist report from constituency observers on the 2 designated reporting days, as well as critical incident from all observers all through the campaign process. The regional coordinators and constituency observer deployment breakdown. We are deploying observers at constituency level, and each region will also have a coordinator, and the way we plan to do that is in this arrangement. In Banjul, there are 3 constituencies. We will have 3 observers stationed in each constituency. In Kanifing municipality, we have 7 constituencies. We will deploy 7 observers. In West Coast region, we have 13 constituencies, and we will deploy 13 observers, 1 for each constituency. North Bank region, there are 7 constituencies. We will deploy 7 observers. Lower River region, there are 6 constituencies. We will deploy 6 observers, 1 for each constituency. Central River region has 11 constituencies, and we will deploy 11 observers. And Upper River region has 6 constituencies. We will deploy 6 observers. The total is 53 observers that will be sent to all the constituencies, 1 in each constituency, with 6 regional coordinators. And these 6 regional coordinators, each region will have 1 coordinator, except Banjul and KM, which will be joined with 1 coordinator. We join Banjul and KM as under one coordinator. So in total, we will have 6 regional coordinators and 53 constituency observers.
Boubacar Sambou further outlined more on their observations.
We only send the observer there to observe, and what he observes is what he reports to us. He has given a detailed report of all the stages that we observed, but he could not give a detailed report of the scrutiny because he was given only 5 minutes. Now, with that, he cannot. So what we will recommend is, that the only thing we can do is to give recommendations. That in subsequent nominations, IEC should consider giving a longer period for people to be given, maybe even the possibility of using the internet or using media to publish some of the documents submitted for the public. Everybody deserves to have access to that, whether you go to IEC or you do not. At least that should be open enough for people, because those things submitted are not supposed to be secret. The public should have access. What we can recommend is for IEC to learn from them that the public is not happy with that, or they are not satisfied with that 5 minutes given. But if they can adjust in the subsequent elections and make it more open for people to be able to have full time to access all the documents.
The Independent Electoral Commission has just concluded the nomination process on Saturday, 5th of November, where they announced the names of those who are qualified and those who are rejected for December 4th elections. That same day in the morning was when the public scrutiny of the nomination files by the aspirants was done. Only 5 minutes was given to people to scrutinize over 20 nomination forms, which wasn't enough for many, including PAC, whose observation could not also adequately observe the public scrutiny. They call on the IEC to improve on the time given for public scrutiny in subsequent nominations. Reporting for N24 TV, Mary Matlinjai.
The Gambia hosted Diaspora Roundtable Conference. The government of the Gambia, through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, International Cooperation and Gambians Abroad, on Wednesday, 10th November, organized a Diaspora Roundtable Conference at Sadauda Kerabajora International Center. Ami Fadera has the rest of that story.
The event was geared towards discussing key thematic areas relevant to the country's short-term and long-term development objectives. Ms. Fumingo Nagano, Chief of Mission International Organization for Migration (IOM), in her statement highlighted the impact of the diaspora to the growth and development of the Gambia. She also highlighted the reason for IOM's support to the conference.
The contribution of the Gambian diaspora to the growth and development of the nation cannot be overemphasized, an impact that IOM recognizes and is committed to supporting the government in harnessing. Both the National Development Plan and the National Migration Policy highlight the need for enhancing the role of the Gambian diaspora in national development and increasing engagement in areas such as remittances, skills and knowledge transfer, among others. IOM is supporting this important conference organized by MOFA with the following objectives. The first, to provide useful information on the activities and challenges of Gambians living abroad, thereby. And secondly, to bring together Gambians outside the Gambia and various government agencies and institutions to establish a network designed to discuss ways and means of harnessing the full potential and talent of Gambians in the diaspora. It is IOM's sincere hope that the Gambian diaspora community will be active participants to continue engaging the government in the areas prioritized in today's discussions.
The Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Suleiman Omanjai, said it is globally recognized that the diaspora is a contributing factor to national development, and the engagement and investment with the diaspora will contribute to the diversification of the Gambia's economy.
And now that the role of the Gambian diaspora in national development has won unprecedented recognition from my ministry. It has become a worldwide phenomenon that the role of the diaspora is globally recognized as a contributing factor to national development. There is therefore no doubt that engagements with and investment in the economic, human, social, and cultural capitals of the diaspora will contribute to the diversification of the Gambian's economy. Such investment will not only encourage the return of Gambians with diverse skill sets and experiences, but will also contribute immensely to Gambia's economic growth, knowledge, and well-being of all Gambians.
Mr. Cherno Omar Kebe, Senior Economics, U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, in his online presentation gave an overview of the Gambian diaspora population and major destination countries for Gambian immigrants.
From the statistical portrait of the Gambian diaspora 2020, estimates show that close to 38,000 Gambians or over 38,000 Gambians hold citizenship in other countries. And again, I think this is also very important information for our policymakers. It is also important to note that the Gambian diaspora population is generally young. The average age of a Gambian diaspora is about 28 years old.
In 2020, remittance from Gambians living abroad constitute 48% of the gross domestic product, which is equivalent to $589,081,000. Currently, the Gambia is among the 15 countries with the highest number of educated migrants. The reason for the conference was to bring together Gambian diaspora and various government institutions to establish a network meant to discuss ways and means of harnessing the potential and talent of Gambians in the diaspora with a view of facilitating their participation and full contribution towards the socio-economic development of the Gambia. Reporting for N24 TV News, I am Ami Fadera.
Melville Roberts sues the government of the Gambia for $500,000. A former director of American Affairs at the Foreign Ministry, Melville Roberts has taken the Gambia government to the ECOWAS court for violating his right to access, fair hearing, privacy, and right to work under equitable and satisfactory conditions, among others. Sukay Jarjasi reports.
A former director of American Affairs at the Foreign Ministry, Melville Roberts, has taken Gambia government to the ECOWAS court for violating his right. Roberts was removed from his position over allegations of sexual assault. He denied any wrongdoing and has since been living abroad. He was charged with rape in absentia. Mr. Roberts is represented by Falana and Falana Chambers, a leading law firm in Nigeria. Melville is requesting the court to ask the Gambia government to pay him $500,000 for damages caused to him and the infringement of his rights and entitlement. Roberts' complaints to the court include the Gambia government's decision to continuously deprive him of access to court to afford him opportunity for a fair trial for the allegation of rape leveled against him, which is a violation of his fundamental right guaranteed by the relevant provisions of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, the Constitution of the Gambia, and the Universal Declaration on Human Rights. That the decision of the Gambia government to go ahead with the prosecution of the plaintiff despite a police report clearing him of all offenses is discriminatory and an interference with the privacy of the plaintiff. That the suspension of the defendant for over 2 years without trial is a violation of the plaintiff's right to work and also a violation of his right to presumption of innocence, lawyers said. The lawyers want the ECOWAS court to make an order directing the Gambia government to reinstate the plaintiff at his work and take cognizance of his promotion, salaries, and emoluments. They also asked for the Gambia government to punish the report of the investigation carried out by the police and also to publish an apology to the defendant for all the embarrassment caused him, restraining the defendant from further interfering with the rights and entitlement without lawful cause. Source: The Standard newspaper.
Gambian leisure boat arrested with cocaine in Senegal. DLEAG says report unfounded. An investigative piece by prominent Senegalese journalist Pape Ali Niang has alleged that a boat from the Gambia was recently arrested by Senegalese Marines with 2 tons of cocaine transferred into it from another boat. According to the piece, the boat had been docked at the Denton Bridge for about 3 weeks prior to its arrest at sea after arriving from Guinea-Bissau. Sukay Jarjasi has the rest of that story.
Pape Ali Niang, an investigative Senegalese journalist, reported that the boat was painted from blue to white, disguised and advertised as a laser boat. The boat was brought to Banjul by Turkish engineers with the help of some Gambians and controlled by two Lebanese nationals who later fell out with the Turkish crew and replaced them with two Senegalese crew. It further alleged that after repainting the boat, its Lebanese controllers and their Gambian contacts registered it as a laser boat in partnership with a local Gambian fishing company, depicting images of the boat as a laser boat for about 3 weeks before setting sail one day. But unknowingly to them, all their activities were being monitored and videoed in Banjul, and so when they set sail, they were already on the radar of anti-drug investigators who continued to monitor them at sea until another boat appeared and leveled with them and transferred 2 tons of cocaine into the boat from Denton Bridge. At this point, the investigators, Europeans, alerted the Senegalese Marines who rushed to the scene and arrested both boats and their crews, the report revealed. According to the report, the entire operation in Banjul was being supervised by a top official in the Gambia who drives a 4-wheel Mitsubishi. The journalist said many names of big people have been linked to the boat's operations in the Gambia and would be released in due course. However, on Sunday, the Gambian authorities refuted the allegations in the report as false. A statement from the Drug Law Enforcement Agency on the matter reads, "The Gambia Drug Law Enforcement Agency learned with dismay false and misleading information circulating on major social media platforms by a notorious mischievous Senegalese journalist Pape Ali Niang on the circumstances leading to the seizure of 2 tons and 26 kilograms of cocaine by the Senegalese authorities on 17 October 2021. An investigation was immediately opened to locate one Mohamed Abdallah, the suspected organizer of the consignment. A guest house, Isa's apartment residence, where Mr. Abdallah allegedly lodged, was raided and thoroughly searched with no traces of either Abdullah or associates. However, the guest house manager confirmed that Mr. Abdullah and 2 others left the Gambia in the early hours of 18 October 2021. In our continuing investigation, the proprietor of Tororo Fishing Company, the local Gambian agent handling the registration of the boat named La Rosa, was invited for questioning on 21st October 2021. According to the agent, Mr. Abdallah deceived him into believing that he wanted to use the boat for leisure river transport, targeting mainly tourists. The Gambian agent was contracted to decorate the boat and prepare flyers to advertise the launching of a maiden river trip. The agent had also started the registration and licensing process of the boat with the Gambia Maritime Administration. Before the documentation was completed, Mr. Abdallah authorized Captain Fode Mara, a Sierra Leone national, to navigate the boat without prior notification of the agent. Therefore, the Senegalese journalist Pape Ali Niang's claims that a senior Gambian personality supervised the boat maintenance are meritless lies that cannot be substantiated. We ask all those who may have come across Niang's report to see it as a purely imaginary tale by an errant reporter desperate to gain attention. We hereby assure Gambians that our country has one of the strongest drug interdiction regimes in Africa, backed by robust accountability mechanisms. Sukaija Jussi, N24 News.
And now over to the international scene. The US accuses Ethiopia of detaining its staff. The United Nations says 16 of its staff members have been detained in the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa. A UN spokesperson said 6 others had been released. He said the country's Ministry of Foreign Affairs had been asked to free all of them immediately. It is not yet clear why they were arrested. Last month, 7 senior UN officials were expelled after being accused of meddling in Ethiopia's affairs. Mary Madeleine Jai has the rest of that.
The Ethiopian government's blocking of aid and essential services with health facilities in Ethiopia's northern Tigray region destroyed is preventing survivors of sexual violence from obtaining essential post-rape care Human Rights Watch said in a report released today. Access to service for gender-based violence survivors in Ethiopia's Tigray region documented the serious health impact, trauma, and stigma experienced by rape survivors aged 6 to 80 since the beginning of the armed conflict in Tigray in November 2020. Human Rights Watch highlighted the human cost of the Ethiopian government's effective siege of the region, which has prevented an adequate and sustained response to survivors' needs and rehabilitation of the region's shattered healthcare system, wherein parties in the first 9 months of Tigray's conflict committed widespread sexual violence while deliberately targeting healthcare facilities, leaving survivors and their communities rallying, said Nisa Berry, Women's Rights Advocacy Director at Human Rights Watch. The government's effective siege of Tigray since June is doubly victimizing survivors by denying them critical medical and psychological mental health support. The African Union and United Nations and international donors should press the Ethiopian government and all parties to the Tigray conflict, including the Tigray People Liberation Front (TPLF), to halt abuse and unimpeded access to aid throughout northern Ethiopia and support international investigation into alleged abuses. Human Rights Watch interviewed 28 health and aid workers, donors, and sexual violence survivors and witnesses. Human Rights Watch also reviewed 43 additional individual cases of sexual violence in Tigray documented through anonymized medical and intake notes from service providers and conducted telephone and written interviews with Tigray regional authorities. Human Rights Watch sent a summary of findings and requests for information to Ethiopian federal authorities but did not receive replies. The Tigray conflict has resulted in widespread reports of sexual violence in areas controlled by Ethiopian and Eritrean federal forces and regional Amhara militias, including rape, gang rape, sexual slavery, and torture, often accompanied by killing of family members, beating, and degrading. Ethnic-based laws. Tigrayan fighters have been implicated in rape, killing, and other abuses against Eritrean refugees in the region and against Amhara civilians in the Amhara region. Human Rights Watch found that the healthcare needs of sexual violence survivors have included termination of pregnancy, treatment of HIV and hepatitis B, and care for broken bones, stab wounds, and traumatic fistula. Survivors have sought support for depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress. One day, Ethiopian military men came to the hospital with a teenage girl, said a doctor working in a hospital in an urban center. We checked her and found that she was pregnant. She was one of the sex slaves in the Greb Giba military camp near Mekele, the regional capital. The doctor said that she had hepatitis. With her consent, we terminated her pregnancy, gave her anti-hepatitis drugs. After that, quite a lot of women and girls were coming in, seeking medication and to terminate their pregnancies, raped by conflict actors, mainly by Eritrean troops and Ethiopian forces. During the first 9 months of the conflict, Ethiopian, Eritrean, and Amhara forces pillaged and destroyed health facilities in Tigray. This, along with the presence of soldiers at checkpoints, on the roads, and near or inside health facilities, prevented survivors, especially from outside urban areas, from getting treatment within critical 72 hours window to prevent pregnancy and HIV. A humanitarian aid provider said that of the sexual violence cases handled by their agency, more than 80% of victims and survivors didn't present themselves within the 72 hours window. After Ethiopian authorities declared a unilateral ceasefire in late June, the government besieged the region, including blocking food, medication, cash, and fuel in violation of international humanitarian law, which has stymied the recovery of health services.
And that brings us to the end of today's news bulletin. Join us next time, same station. I am Mudiwa.